Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above Average Show! Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Above Average Show. We have a special guest here today. Our guest is the actor, wonderful actor, Russell Snipes. Thank you. And as always, I am your host, Joe. I want better. Wow. Ouch. Okay. So let's focus more on Russell than that lady in the back row there.
All right, yeah.
How are you doing, Russell? How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you, Joe?
I am doing good. I am having a lot of fun doing this.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. And you are now what I would at least consider a successful actor. You've had some pretty good roles. How did you get started, though? Were you born into the acting world? Was it like at 5 years old you saw a TV show? Did you accidentally walk onto a set, stumble into Tom Cruise, and he's like, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" Or what is your story?
Well, it's a pretty long story. I'd never had a formal education in acting, but about 10 years ago, I met a hairdresser that worked in Hollywood, and he looked at me and said, "You have a unique look." And he said, "I want you to do a photo shoot with one of my photographers, Josh Norris." And what I did was I booked that photo shoot, and I didn't know what to expect. It was my first time doing anything like this, and I had a great photo shoot with this photographer, and I started submitting my pictures to modeling agencies and things like that. I got signed and started booking modeling work and working on a somewhat regular basis. And, it opened doors to acting, and I met and networked with a lot of people in, the film and television industry. But what makes this a long story is my agency signed me. I signed a contract with an agency, and I didn't realize it was an exclusive one, and that agent eventually stopped pushing me. So, I felt like I almost felt betrayed in a sense. Yeah. That happens with some of these smaller agencies and things like that. But after that, I walked away just because I was really, I felt like I was, screwed over in that sense. I walked away. I started a business as a financial advisor, wore the suit, 9 to 5, clean cut guy, things like that. And what happened a few years into that, I was very successful, made a lot of money, but, life's not about that. It's about happiness. Mm-hmm. My mother passed away about 7 years ago, and she was the one. Sorry. Thank you. She was the one that really pushed me to model, act, and things like that. And she always saw me. She saw me in the yard making movies when I was a little kid, but I didn't think about that and remember that until years later. And she kept that dream alive and always said, "Don't give up on that. You have a chance at doing something special with it." Yeah. And when she passed away, she was my best friend. She was everything to me. So when I lost that, I felt like I lost everything. And I made it out of that, and it made me and it compelled me to do the things that I always wanted to do, but I never did, and that was acting. I started modeling because I wanted to act and things like that. So after I was working 3 years into this, I was a financial advisor, started my own business. I walked away from that, and then I started making submissions. I had headshots done and things like that, updated my resume, and I started making submissions for background work. And I did, make submissions to some principal roles and things like that, but I didn't know whether I wanted to work in front of the camera or behind it. I came into it with an open mind, mm-hmm. and the more and more I got on set, I ended up, it's surprising how fast things can do if you just simply do what you're told. And this from coming from an extras casting company. If you have people that you can depend on and they simply do what they're told to do, then that's noticed. Yeah. And
just show up on time, do what you're told, don't make a fuss. That's it.
Exactly. It's so simple. And what I did was I applied the same principles that I used in my financial business. I applied it to acting and modeling. I discovered how to market myself just like I did my own business. I networked just like I did my own business. So when I started making these submissions and things like that, and I started doing the job that I was given, people noticed I didn't cause drama. People noticed that I did what I was simply told. And, I tell people if you fly under the radar, you're going to get noticed. And that's contradictory, but it's actually true. You do this simple job, and you do it with integrity, and you do it to the point to where people can count on you, and you get noticed.
Yep.
Even if you seem like you're in the background, it stands out, and people begin to trust you. And, I started getting bumped up from extra roles to, photo doubling, stand-in, and that gave me, my first. It's funny. One of my first jobs was, I was Owen Wilson's photo double and butt double, and the funny story behind that is, in this process of doing my homework, doing my due diligence in terms of pursuing acting. I was doing my homework and I was kind of piecing together what production this may be, and I noticed that Owen Wilson was making a movie around the same time, and it seemed like they were making a general description of him for a stand-in photo double and things like that. So I pieced it together. It's probably Owen Wilson. People said my entire life I kind of look like Owen Wilson or something like that.
You do.
And I submitted, and what they asked for in the submission was a picture of my butt. And along with my headshot and things like that.
And how do you know you have a butt that looks like Owen Wilson's butt?
Well, that's the tricky part. You don't. You just hope you do. But yeah, I mean.
And how do you take that photo then? Do you go in the bathroom and take a bathroom mirror selfie? Do you have a friend like, hey buddy, can you just take a quick photo of my butt? Or do you ask like somebody you don't know, a stranger, just randomly on the street because you don't want your friends to know?
That would be...
my butt could be on screen.
Yeah, that would be the exciting way. But actually, it was my girlfriend at the time. I did just that.
That sounds more legit than anything I came up with.
Yeah. We went to the bathroom, took a picture of my butt, and then submitted it. And it was to Rose Lock, or
yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the casting agency or not, but I submitted it to her, and it was a day later they called me in for a camera test. So it was a camera test here in Atlanta. So I used to live in Greenville, South Carolina. So I drove to the camera test and went through the process. And it was funny because I had to go there, get on camera, show my face, and then I had to go into another room, and they actually took another picture of my butt. And then they showed it to Owen Wilson and the casting director, and from that point, I found out that I was cast as his stand-in photo double and butt double. And
can I ask a really awkward question?
Of course.
Do they need to do grooming for that sort of thing?
It's funny. I'm going to tell you the process.
I'm kind of curious. Like, do you go in and it's like, we're going to have to shave a little bit, or maybe if we sculpt it a little bit, or for the next 2 weeks, do some more squats, and then you'll be the double.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I met Ed Helms in a unique way, and you say grooming. Well, they didn't.
Is this another butt story?
Yeah, it kind of is. There wasn't grooming involved in my situation, but what they did have to do was slap on tanner. Owen Wilson was playing this kind of hippie type character. It ended up being called Father Figures. Was the movie.
Yeah.
When I was signed on to it, it was originally called Bastards. But anyways, they had to tan my entire body. So this is my first day. This is my first day on set. And they are rubbing tanner all over me, and I have to get into a robe, and as they are rubbing down my body, I have to keep covering myself, and eventually my robe's completely off, and it's just between my legs covering up my privates. So so they're rubbing tanner on my butt. Now behind me, Ed Helms pops out of the door with a painted black eye for his camera test, and he says, "Oh God!" And then he didn't realize he was walking into some guy naked and a couple of makeup artists rubbing tanner on him, and then Ed apologizes for walking in, and I say, "Oh, don't worry about it, Ed. My name's Russ, by the way." And then that kind of breaks the ice and he laughs and says, "Hey, I'm Ed." And that's my story for meeting Ed Helms. You know, I grew up watching him on The Office and things like that. Big fan. The Hangover.
Yeah.
But you know, just to answer your question, there wasn't any grooming involved, but they did have to slather tanner all over me. You know. But yeah, that was probably the first legitimate gig that I had. Before that point in time, I had just done background work. And background work, you know, it's good. I tell people always start there because then you can see what part do you want to work in. Do you want to work in front of the camera, behind it? You know, if you get on set as a background actor, there's a lot of downtime on some of these sets.
Yeah.
But you get to see, you know, the cinematographers working, the DPs setting up light and organizing things. You get to see the director directing and things like that. So it provides a great opportunity to really see behind the scenes and see how it works on these, you know, medium, big, and huge mega budget movies.
Yeah, and especially being background too. Not to downplay it because I've worked background, I've done background casting, but it's fairly mindless work.
Yeah.
Because all they're doing is, okay, just look busy sitting at this desk, or walk from this point to this point. So there's nothing typically too complicated about it, to where you can pay attention to the guy that's hanging the lights. You can pay attention to the guy that's running the camera and why they're changing the angles, why they're moving this lighted angle to this over here,
Yeah.
why are they lighting up the wall behind the guy? Don't you want to see it? Well, no, because you want to feature the wall and you want to see those textures behind him and bring that to life. And you get to see all of that stuff because you're not caught up in thinking about what are my lines, what are my movements. Like, my movement, I just need to walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Which most people, I will say most people, can't screw that up.
yeah, and you'd be surprised sometimes. Sometimes people surprise you, and it's crazy. There's when I was working background years ago, there were so many people that just couldn't follow directions, and it was just so unprofessional. And I'm like, you have an opportunity to see something that you wouldn't normally see in your day-to-day life. So why are you gonna sit here and act like a diva, or why are you gonna do something that's inappropriate or draw attention to yourself when it's not? It's the wrong way, the wrong time.
Yeah, and you have an opportunity that millions of people would love to have, and you're given this opportunity, and then possibly screw it up.
Yeah,
just come in, do your job, be professional, go home, and you get a paycheck for it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm not sure what I'm talking about now. Forgotten the question, but yeah.
Well, we were talking about your history and where you started and how you got to places that you've been. So you've already talked about working with Ed Helms, working with Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
And what else have you worked on?
After I was Owen Wilson's photo double, I got hired as MacGyver's stand-in. I was actually the lead's stand-in, Lucas Till. Yeah.
We just talked about him on the last podcast that we recorded, which it may not air in order, so I may be referring to something that they have or have not listened to yet. But yeah. Because she had worked on the episode when they were in Puerto Rico. So I don't know if you worked on that episode too, that just aired like last year. But Puerto Rico hit the hurricane, so they went there to kind of help things out, and she was in the bank while it was getting robbed, and she was right next to him. So you may have been standing next to one of our other guests.
Maybe.
And didn't even recognize each other and know it, and cross paths again because you just saw her like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's an amazing small world.
It is.
But you worked with Lucas.
Yeah, I worked with Lucas. I was working season 1 of MacGyver, so I did that season, and I started out as a stand-in, and then they bumped me up to photo double. And that was a little more exciting because it's more than, you're not just an extra, you're playing the lead's photo double. And I got to go through, and I actually got to make some of the devices that MacGyver made. And I played his hand double some days, I played his body double the others. We'd be, there's scenes we were shooting downtown Atlanta where we would be racing through traffic and exciting things like that. So
you got to be the driver double too.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
So it was really fun. With that being a photo double, you don't have the pressure of being the lead and remembering all your lines and things like that. But you simply go through the motions of that scene. And with that, it was kind of me taking baby steps towards acting, and that's what being Owen Wilson's double did too. We did scenes downtown Atlanta where we were racing through traffic too, and I had to drive the car or I had to do whatever. But these were baby steps that I was taking that kind of just introduced me to the acting world, and it allowed me to go through the motions and things like that the actors do without all the pressure of being the lead of a big hit show.
And to absorb all of that information from the stars because you're working literally right next to them. Sometimes
Yes.
in their position.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you learn a lot from doing
Yeah.
way more than you would from classes.
Yeah, and being a stand-in and photo double puts you right there up front. You know, my first episode on MacGyver, I got to work with James Wan. I walked onto the set, and it was at an airport, and the first thing they do is make me hang from the tires of an airplane. They had the landing gear, and James Wan was directing me on day one. James Wan is one of the most well-known directors in the entire world. So right from the get-go, I was just blown away with what the position that I was put in and how lucky I was to have that. You know, every episode I would be able to meet the principal cast and I'd be able to shake their hand. And you got, being a stand-in and photo double, you get to have these intimate moments with the crew, as opposed to background. You know, you're at a distance, but you can watch. Mm-hmm. But when you're there as a stand-in and photo double, you are on the front lines of sorts, and you really get to see and interact with everybody. And I still, there are so many things. One day I was hanging off a helicopter. Another day I was standing on top of a tank. And it's crazy what these action shows do. And, a lot of stand-in jobs, they're just really standing around in a studio.
Yeah.
Move from one, you do your blocking and things like that. But how often do you get to hang from a helicopter and to set up the shot?
Yeah. How
often do you get to drive through traffic, race through traffic at high speed, and that's you driving the car as if you're the lead, it was being the photo double and stand-in for Owen Wilson, and same thing with Lucas Till and MacGyver. Those things are what made me realize I wanted to act. And, it was kind of the final, the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, okay, I want to go all in. So, yeah, that's MacGyver's what made me turn this thing into a full-time career. I was working on that 70 hours a week at least, something like that. And it took up every bit of my time, but work didn't feel like work. It was play to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what got me started. That was pretty much the beginning, and since then I've been auditioning and being cast in principal roles and things like that. I stopped doing background 2 years ago. It's funny, I think I met you on one of my first background jobs was with Allegiant.
Yeah.
And that was 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 now, I don't know.
I lose track of time too. There's so many projects. It's probably closer to 4. You're probably right.
Yeah. But I met you there, and that was it was at least one of my first background gigs, and I was one of the featured factionless soldiers. I worked with stunt coordinator Alessandro Folchetti.
Yep.
Is that how you say it?
It's Italian, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But I think it's like Alessandro Folchetto.
Ah, Folchetto.
But I could be completely wrong because I don't speak Italian either.
Yeah. But he's somebody.
Alex. We all called him Alex.
Yeah. Yep. Simple. He's somebody that really he took note of me, and I met another guy named Gary Watson who was working with Alex too. Gary's a great guy. To this day, me and him we're working on building a project on the side, one that I'm producing. But I met so many wonderful people through these jobs, and there's so many professional people that are pursuing it at the level I am or higher. But yeah. It's crazy who you'll meet, and you never know how things will go full circle, because you can meet somebody on a job that may have been a low budget movie or may have been a small project, and years later they've kept up grinding and doing their thing, and then you'll meet them on a big budget set or things of that sort. So this Atlanta film community it seems small to me. It's almost intimate. There's people you see.
It definitely is.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah. Especially when you work on a set like Allegiant or Insurgent, where most of the days you're with the same people over and over and over. So you're with this group of, could be 20 people, 50 people, 100 people. Even if it's 100 people, you still had your faction, and the factions kind of all hung out together because they were all it sounds so stereotypical, but it's all based on looks, but most of the people with the same looks had the same likes. Mm-hmm. So you were instantly bonding with people that, oh, you're dressed homeless like me, or you're all dressed in black and white like me. And, oh, we all like the same thing, and because somehow casting directors, which hats off to Jamie and how she does this, she just knows people by looking at them. She's like, oh yeah, these are the smart people. These are the people that are going to be more athletic. These are the people that are going to be more, what was the other one, like judicial, and somehow they all have like the same likes, the same personalities, and she's never even met some of them.
That's
she
wild.
just looks at them and is like, oh, yep, I know where they go.
She can just read through them, I guess. You
Yeah.
know. And you do it so often that you develop a sense for people, and you develop a sense for what situation they would suit, and what would be best for them, and what would be best for the project.
And then that ends up creating a bond between all of them. So you got your group of erudites that all the erudites are now just hanging out together. All of the dauntless are sitting there doing push-ups and trying to challenge each other. Like, we're at 750 so far, let's keep going.
Yeah.
And then you've got all of the factionless that are just looking at the dauntless, rolling their eyes like, why would you even want to do one push-up, let alone 750 of them?
These people fit into these cliques. Yeah, these people fall into these cliques, and it's kind of funny. And you have this group cohesiveness where you really bond with people,
Yes, definitely. But let's go ahead and take a break real quick, and we'll hear a couple words from our sponsors, and we will be right back with more Russell Snipes.
Coming soon to a theater near you this fall, a movie about a guy and a girl. And this thing happens. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll post about it on social media. Then you'll laugh about your post because you think you're a clever little cockatoo, and you know it. Soon the whole world will know it, but not until you hit post. You second guess if it's funny, or maybe it's just funny to you. You'll get all insecure, but you'll post it anyways, and you'll get about 16 responses. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all, you little clever cockatoo. This episode brought to you by Rewind. This episode brought to you by Rewind. This episode brought to you by Rewind. This episode brought to you by Rewind.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. We are here with the Above Average Joe Show, and our guest today is still Mr. Russell Snipes, and he is here to actually give us some advice on how to get into the acting industry for anybody that's like, oh, I want to be an actor. And this is practical advice for anybody. So this will be if you're just starting out, if you've never done it before. These are some very good tips and tricks that will help you to succeed. And Russell, you can take it away from here.
All right. Really, there's a few simple things that you can do, and they will get you noticed. They will get you, more jobs, and people will realize when you do these things that you're taking it very seriously, and you want to succeed. But for starting out, I always tell people to get involved and network. Doing background work is a great way to do that because you have a lot of downtime, and at the appropriate times you can speak with people like the PAs and things like that. And a lot of people get involved in background work, and then they end up working as a PA or things like that. And it gives you a great perspective of the entire behind the scenes and what really puts the show together.
And when you say PA, what is a PA?
Production assistant.
And what do they
do? They help really facilitate everything on set, from handling extras to, they have wardrobe PAs that handle the wardrobe and things like that. They're the people that really make the show happen outside of the directors and the director of photography, the main director, and the gaffers and things like that, lighting and stuff like
Gaffer.
that.
What is a gaffer? All these terms that nobody's going to know unless they worked on set.
Oh, man.
Gaffer's an electrician for anybody that's curious.
Yeah. Like I said, get involved in network as much as you possibly can in any way, shape, or form. I always tell people to get a good headshot and audition. It's key to have a good headshot. People need to be able to see how you look right here and right now, and they want you to look. If you submit a headshot, it should look like how you look right now. Some people submit headshots that are 10, 15 years old, and you can tell that right when they show up. Oh, you look completely different now. But always have a recent headshot. And
don't Photoshop it.
Oh, no.
Do not use filters.
No,
do not use any sort of effects.
No, that's unnecessary, and people want to see the real you, not a smoothed over version that you wish you were. You know.
And as far as the headshots go, what would you suggest for doing, like, for backgrounds? I've seen people that have used plain color backgrounds. I've seen people walk out into a field. I've seen brick backgrounds. Is there any sort of advice that you would give for choosing a background for where to set yourself?
In terms of a background, you don't want to choose something that's too distracting. You want to be the focal point of the photo. So whatever it is, you don't want a lot of commotion in the background, which is, you know, you don't want a lot of different colors and vibrant colors. You want to be the main focus of the picture. So right when the casting director looks at your picture, their eyes need to be drawn to you, not the pretty colors in the background or fluorescent colors or anything distracting. So I always tell people have a plain background. You know, when you're outdoors and things like that, shoot against solid colors and things of that nature.
And then when you're looking for a photographer, there are 100 photographers in Atlanta that do headshots.
Yes.
How do you find the right one for you?
Well, you know, what I did in the beginning was I asked working actors. I looked up their headshots and saw that they were good, and I asked, well, who did you get your photo taken by? And, you know, I networked with so many different photographers that way because I would really just ask, you know, working actors, who have you worked with, who produces good work, and who knows, you know, the headshots that they are looking for in the industry. And that's kind of how I got a feel for who's good and, you know, who's not so good. And
so it's a lot of referral and who you know, and
yeah.
And if they can prove themselves with somebody else, you will trust their word of mouth.
Exactly.
More than going online, Googling Atlanta headshots and just picking the first name that pops up.
Yes, exactly. There's a plethora of photographers here. So you want to go with somebody that's proven because, you know, when you do a headshot, you're typically going to pay money for it. And you know, that's something that is a worthwhile investment, and you do have to be willing to take, you know, some of these worthwhile investments because in the end it'll ultimately put you in the best position to succeed. So that's why headshot's vital, having a good one. And you also may have different headshots. You may have one, you know, I have one with more of a commercial look with a smile and I'm wearing a suit, and then I have one where I'm wearing a leather jacket and it's a more intense look, and I use that for the antagonist roles, you know, and bad guys and things like that, more serious, dramatic roles. And then if they're looking for a family man, I use, you know, the nice smile headshot with, you know, in a suit, or, you know, I'm dressed in dad clothes or something like that. But yeah, you will kind of want to tailor your headshot to the kind of actor you want to be.
So, side note, which we will come back to this later, because this was a movie that I loved. What kind of headshot do you use for an astronaut role?
Oh, astronaut role. I don't know which one I used. Actually, my agent submitted me to that one. So I don't know which one she picked, but whatever one she picked, it worked.
Oh, awesome. Next point. Let's move on.
All right. The next thing I say that you need to focus on is building your reel. You know, if you really want to act, the main thing in the beginning is getting your headshot and building your reel. You know, directors want to see what you're capable of. They want to see at what level you can act. And, you know, it needs to be able to translate to the screen. So at any and all costs in the beginning, when you have no reel, you do as much as you can to build that reel. You know, do student films, of course audition for paid roles and things like that. But even if it's unpaid, in the beginning, it's worth it. It's part of the investment you have to make as a serious actor to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And to do that, you have to start somewhere. So building your reel is a huge part of that. And, you know, it took me probably, you know, 2 years to build a legitimate reel, and 2 years of, you know, audition after audition after audition, and, you know,
free project after free project after free project.
Yeah. You volunteer your time, and, you know, in the beginning, you can only expect so much. You can't expect to get high pay when you're an inexperienced actor that is not proven.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't even expect to get paid because you may not really know how to act, but you want to learn, But it's essential to build your reel, and it shows people that you can act. It shows the director what you're capable of, and it shows them, your range too. On your reel, you want to show everything from, your comedic side to your serious side, being dramatic roles and things like that. They want to see versatility. And the more that you can show them, the better. But make sure it's quality work too. And when you're making your reel, you want to prioritize it by the ones with high production value, the ones with great lighting, the ones with a spectacular set, or and you may not have a spectacular set or great lighting in the beginning, but you prioritize them with the production value. Your talent and production value are two things you want to focus on when building your reel. And the next thing I would say is educate yourself. Take classes, read books. You want to absorb as much knowledge as you can. One huge thing for me in terms of educating myself was stand-in work was like, the best schooling I could have for an inexperienced actor is to go and be a stand-in. You're there from, I was on sets for, sometimes 16 hours a day, but I was always taking note of what everybody was doing, how they set up the shots, how the actors were preparing for the scenes, how the director was directing. Through stand-in photo double work, I was provided a wealth of knowledge that people don't get to see on a day-to-day basis, and people pay for this kind of education to gather this stuff, and you can't gather, real things like that except being in the field. But always educate yourself. Look for legitimate, proven people that are teachers and coaches and things like that.
What kind of books have you read that you would suggest to people, or what are some of the classes that you really enjoyed and got a lot out of?
I forgot the name of the book. Michael Caine wrote a book I think it was in the 70s it came out, something like that.
And it still holds up.
Yeah, it still holds up. That was one.
I guess acting really doesn't change. Acting has been acting since acting.
Exactly. I mean, you look at films and plot lines and actors today, and they're using the same techniques they used 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Meisner, yep.
Meisner's
been around a long time.
Exactly. I use, when I can, I've used a couple people in particular that have really helped me take my game to the next level. One of those guys in particular is Carl Kennedy. He's a working actor here in Atlanta. He also provides a self-tape service. So, I've used him in the past for filming some of my auditions, but at the exact same time, he's going through, he's got a master's in theater, and every audition turns into a lesson, and he has a different way of approaching things with how he films his auditions, because he's like a teacher. Yeah. That's filming your audition, and in the middle of it, he'll pinpoint your weakness, and then he'll talk about how he's educated himself in terms of overcoming that weakness. But Carl Kennedy's one of the guys that I use. Jason Warner Smith has a class here in Atlanta. Jason Warner Smith was one of the principals on Walking Dead, among many other movies, but that was one of my favorite roles of him, and it's one of my favorite shows. So, but I networked with him, and I got into his class probably a year and a half ago, or a year ago. And he's one of the guys that takes this very seriously in terms of educating yourself as an actor, and he educates people from the ground up, whether you have any experience or you've been acting 10 years. He kind of accommodates his classroom setting, and caters to the needs of the actors in it. And he keeps small classes, so he can really give personal advice and really break down the things that you need to learn and focus on to become a better, stronger actor.
Yeah, and for anybody that's watched The Walking Dead, who is he on The Walking Dead? Because a lot of people might not know the actors' names, but they know the character names.
He played Gavin. He was one of
Negan's
Negan's.
Yeah,
that's right. He was probably like the third guy below Negan, something like that, third or fourth down.
One of the saviors, which everybody loves right now.
Exactly. Jason was on there for a solid, I think, 2 seasons, something like that. And he's not working on that show anymore. But
Everybody finds a fate on there eventually.
That's right. That's right.
Unfortunately, R.I.P. Sorry for the spoilers if you aren't caught up.
Oh man. The next thing that I would tell actors to do and focus on, whether you're experienced or inexperienced, is focus on discovering your brand. You have to know your range. You shouldn't audition for a role where the character is 40 if you're 20 or you look like you're a teenager. You need to focus on the roles that best suit you and the roles that you're most interested in. I found out that the ones for me in particular were the more dramatic, intense, serious roles, and I also like to do comedy. But I end up getting cast as very serious and, sometimes the bad guy. I also do stunt work, so I end up in a lot of action roles too. So if you have a stunt background, know that's in your wheelhouse. And, you have to know, what kind of person you want to brand yourself as, though. And that really, once you have a niche, you can really focus on that, and then you can get cast in some roles that may come more naturally to you as well.
Yeah.
You can't. It's hard to fake a role that you really don't care about and you're really not interested in. So find the roles that you really are interested in that come naturally to you, and develop those skills in that area, and you'll be passionate and enthusiastic about it. And that's really what I've done is branding myself, and people know I've kind of catered myself to being like an action guy, and I do stunt work and things like that. So I end up getting cast as soldiers and people, mercenaries and things like that. That's what I always say: brand yourself.
Yeah.
The next thing I would say is know your casting sites. Know the most legitimate ones. Here in the Southeast,
do not know the know those too. Know the bad ones so you don't use them.
Exactly. You have to know the ones you should listen to and you should look into, and the ones that you shouldn't.
Should not.
So you can avoid them. Because there's there's so many people trying to take advantage of this industry. There's agencies, there's casting companies that bring people in, but they're not very open and honest about how things work. So know the good ones and know the bad ones too. That's right, Joe.
What are some of the good ones? What are ones that you would suggest that people should go check out and just know that I've worked with these people or I know these people and they're legit?
Yeah.
That people can seek out and, okay, so that one's good. And if this one's good, so I've got a couple of options. Like, what are some of those companies or websites that people can check out that you've used? Which ones do you like?
I always tell people to start off with Actors Access. That's a very popular one here in the Southeast, and a lot of the casting directors here use that, and they use it nationwide, of course. But again, here on the East Coast, it is one of the more reputable sites. It's probably the most reputable in terms of what I've been working with over the past 2 years.
That's usually the first one that everybody answers with. Is Actors Access.
Yep. That's the first one I start with, and it's the one that I comb through before any others in terms of submissions and looking for possibilities. The second one I would say is Casting Networks. I wouldn't make it my primary, but it's a good secondary site to look into. The roles that kind of fall through the cracks, sometimes they pop up on Casting Networks.
Yeah.
And some, if you're willing to travel to the West Coast, if you're looking for principal roles, they do stuff on East Coast and West Coast and all around. LA Casting is one based in LA. If you're willing to travel, that is a legitimate one. It's a lot like Actors Access and things like that on the West Coast. Of course, your work for LA Casting is going to be focused in LA.
Typically.
But
I know some of our Atlanta shows, they will still search for their day players out from California and ship them in. But that has been transitioning a lot lately to where they're using a lot more local talent. Because they're finally realizing, too, that we do have talent here. That it's just more of an untapped market. To where a lot of the people that came from California, the producers and the directors, all seem to think, well, not all of them, a lot of them still tend to think that all of the talent is still back in California. It's still in New York. And they're finally coming to that realization and catching up with the actual industry that is here. There is talent here. And a lot of people from, a lot might be an overstatement, but there's been several people coming from California and New York to Atlanta
Yeah.
to catch those roles, to grab those opportunities, because they feel that there's a lot less competition in our
Exactly.
city, even though the competition is still there. It's just for them. I guess it's like a different landscape.
Yeah.
It's a whole new monster for them to try and go through. So it gives them that little bit of energy and a little bit of more. Yeah, I'm gonna try harder now that I'm in a new location.
That's
and
right.
Gives them that little extra push.
Yeah.
To just keep moving on.
Yep. Atlanta, unlike LA and New York, Atlanta's not, in my mind, it's not as overly saturated as LA or New York. Like you said, the competition is harsh out there, and in New York too. You have 10 times as many actors there, if not more, that are pushing as hard as anybody here, and there's only so many roles, but.
Yep.
Here in Atlanta, I think for somebody starting out, I think this is the best market to start out in, because there's not nearly as much stiff competition as those areas. Now, you have to work hard to earn these jobs. You're not going to get a break because you're working in Atlanta. But, I look at working in entertainment industry as it's calculated gambling. You do a few things right, then you're going to increase your odds. So a part of my calculated gambling is doing all this advice that I'm suggesting, but also putting yourself in a market that you may be able to take advantage of also tilts things in your favor. So you do as much as you can to increase the odds that you're going to win in this process of, like I said, calculated gambling.
Yeah. It's like counting cards in poker.
Yeah, exactly. And you put yourself in the right position, then you increase the odds that you'll get cast.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is.
You just got to do your due diligence.
Yes.
Which is I wouldn't say a lot, but there's several people that I know that's a lot of what holds them back. Is that they feel, I've got the talent, I've got what it makes, I've got the X factor, I've taken the classes, it should just happen.
Yeah.
And even for the actors that are in California that have made it, that are the stars, that are the household names, they're still taking classes.
Yes.
They're still training themselves. They're still going through things because they're still, maybe I should try this, maybe I should try that. Because there's so many different techniques, there's so many different things that they can learn that they're never stopping learning.
Yes, exactly.
Which it's just like the IT industry. IT never stops changing, so they have to adapt. The actors that have been around for the last 40 years straight have been adapting with all of these changes, and that's what keeps them in the industry. And you see other actors that have just fallen off the face of the earth. Some of it, of course, is by their own choice. It's like, I just want to be out of the spotlight, which is their choice, which is awesome. But if you want to stay in that spotlight, you have to keep working.
Yes.
You have to keep working hard. You have to keep bettering yourself.
Yes.
Or you will fall by the wayside.
That's exactly right, Joe. You have to continue to evolve as the industry evolves. And even if you're A or B list actor and you've made these huge big budget movies and had enormous success, you still have to keep your game at a high level to compete with everybody else, because somebody wants your job. At all times, somebody wants the job
Everybody wants your job.
So if you keep changing with the industry, you keep educating yourself, and you keep doing these things that keep you at the front lines of sorts of consideration for roles, you have to do those things to stay afloat. And not only stay afloat, if you want to take it to a high level, you have to do these things. You have to educate yourself. You have to, you have to be disciplined, and you have to be very, not, I wouldn't say the words critical, but you always have to constantly evaluate yourself and put yourself in a position to where you're doing the best things to give you the best chance of success.
Yeah.
Situation of living alone got you feeling lonely? Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one left on this planet, and now that the others have left? Maybe now is the time to crawl out from under that rock and begin dating again. And we are here to provide help for you. That's right, help. HALP. The horny app for lizard people. We will search our database for other lizard people living in your area and match you up with that special someone. It could be your neighbor, your dermatologist, your OBGYN, or possibly even that Britney Spears. You only have to answer 3 quick, easy questions, and we will find a match instantly. It's that simple. Help, the horny app for lizard people. But don't you worry, because help is on its way.
Next, I would say submit to legitimate agencies. Now, when I say legitimate, I'm talking about agencies that have actual working actors. When you're looking for an agency, you should never have to pay for an agent. If you do, then you're involved in a scam already of sorts.
And what is the difference between the agencies and the casting websites that you just talked about?
Well,
what is the difference, and why should I bother with both? Why can't I just do one and not the other?
Well, the thing is, you can learn how to submit yourself to roles through these websites and things like that, which you should do.
They don't take a cut.
Yeah, exactly. But also, if you really want to take your game to the next level, you need somebody on your side fighting for you, somebody that believes in you, and somebody that wants to push your name. And, an agency or an agent is going to do that for you. If they are legitimate, then they want you to represent their business. And that's what it really is. You are representing themselves and yourself if you get cast in something they set you up for. But, an agent is somebody that can really take your game to the next level. They're in a loop, a network that actors sometimes don't have access to. Some of these big principal roles, they aren't released on Actors Access to the public, and a lot of those situations, they're only released to the agents. So if you get yourself and set yourself up with a legitimate agency, then you're going to come across opportunities for more and better roles, principal roles and things like that. So I would definitely say get an agent, and I would get one that is SAG franchised. And what I mean by that is that they basically have an affiliation with SAG, and they are primarily submitting their talents to union jobs. SAG, it basically means you're in the union. And there's a standard for payment. There's a standard for work conditions and things like that that protect the actors and protect crew and things like that. But you want to get with a SAG franchise agent because they're going to be able to submit you to the most legitimate and the best jobs out there on the market right now. With that, I always say set up an IMDb account, IMDb Pro. You can do great research into what agencies are keeping actors busy. A lot of people don't know this, but you can come through, A, B, C list actors, and you can find out who represents them. So if you go look at actors and you look at the ones that are working on a regular basis, you can actually go and find out the agency that is representing them. So if you do your homework and you find out the agents that are keeping their actors busy, those are the agencies you want to submit to and possibly sign with. You'll find agencies that aren't so legitimate and they're not keeping the actors busy, but the ones that are, those are the agencies that you can gather from IMDb Pro, and you can kind of compile a list to submit to. You wouldn't want to submit to the agencies for the A-list actors because that's kind of, you have to get to that status before you can almost qualify for consideration. But the B, C, and I don't want to say D-list is in there bad, but they're working actors.
Yeah.
Look into the working actors and who's successful, and look into the agency that actor is affiliated with, and then from there you can find out the submission information for that agency online. Typically.
Yeah.
So I always tell people use IMDb Pro when you're submitting to agencies to research and find out the best and the ones that are really working their actors and pushing them in that market. One big thing that I say in terms of advice for anybody, whether you're starting out or you've been an actor, is sacrifice and take risks. And with that, what I mean is, I have an example. one Friday, early evening, my agent called me and said, you have to, she didn't say I had to be there. She said, you have an opportunity in Miami. And I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. 12 hours. It was actually a 14-hour drive. She said, American Crew is casting for models for their next international campaign and their a magazine ad and things like that. And this was a modeling job, but the same idea kind of applies to modeling and acting and things like that.
Yeah.
But this is just a good example. She called me at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, said there's an opportunity for me to meet with American Crew for an audition to be one of their models. And I asked, what time is it? And she said, 10 a.m. So it's 7 p.m. on
13 hours
Friday night, and there's a meeting at 10 a.m. and I had to make the decision right then and there. Do I go? Do I not? The agent was like, I'm not going to get mad at you if you don't go because it was sudden.
Yeah.
And I had plans for the weekend. I had everything set up. But
and that's a no sleep drive then, unless you've got a buddy to go with you.
No sleep drive when you're solo, and I had to leave the second I got that call, or if I waited an hour, I'm risking.
You've already lost it.
Exactly.
Because you have to show up on time.
Have to be on time. Always be on time.
Always be early.
Exactly. But I said, okay, screw it. I'm just going to go do it. I'm all in. I love acting and modeling. This is what I want to do. This is what I am going to do. So I get in the car and drive 13, 14 hours, no sleep, and I ended up arriving there 20 minutes before the call time. I got there, and I was immediately pulled aside and used as an example of the look they were looking for.
Oh, wow.
And I was just blown away because I had no sleep, bags under my eyes. In my mind, I looked rough.
You haven't had a shower in the last 14 hours.
Greasy hair, everything. Yeah.
Fast food dripping down your shirt.
Yeah, crumbs on me and everything like that. But yeah, I took that sacrifice. I ended up immediately getting noticed. And I felt like this was some joke. Like, are you guys serious with me? There were 200 people there, and I was like the 20th in line. And then they pull me outside of the line. They pull me into this private room, and then they have all 200 people. They pull all of them in there to see me and say, "This is the look we're looking for, and this is kind of the hairstyle and things like that." And then they asked me to do. It's like I had to do an on-camera. It wasn't an audition, but I had to introduce myself because they were going to show this to producers and things like that. So I went through that process, and I was immediately noticed after taking the risk of driving 14 hours straight overnight. The next day, I found out I was cast.
Wow.
And then not only...
Were you already driven all the way back
No,
home?
I did hang around. I did hang around because I had a little bit.
Because you had no sleep.
Yeah, that was the main reason. But since they noticed me, I was like, wow, I got a chance. So I'm definitely going to stay a night. So I waited till the next day, and then I ended up getting cast for the job. And not only I got cast for that job, but I ended up, one job led to another. And then that job led to another. At first, it was for a magazine. And then they asked me to do another photo shoot that was for their national campaign. And then I did that job right and listened and just did what I was supposed to do. And
snowballed it.
Yeah, and then I got invited to a runway show. And I'm not the tallest guy in the world. But, I got invited to do a runway job just because of my work ethic and how I handled the other two jobs, and they liked my look. But, that was a situation where most people wouldn't have made that drive. But the next day, it already paid for itself, and not only it paid for itself, but it was tenfold because I got 2 other jobs from it, and they were some of the highest paying jobs I've ever had.
Yeah.
And another example is I always wanted to work with Hugh Jackman. So when they were making Logan in New Orleans, I didn't care what the pay was. I didn't care what the position was. I said, I just want to go there. I just want to see him. I just want to be on that set. And I'm a huge fan of all this work and things like that. So I submitted to...
favorite Hugh Grant movie? Or sorry, not
Hugh Jackman.
Favorite Hugh Jackman movie?
Hugh Jackman. I'm a big X-Men fan. So I've loved every single movie they've made with him as Wolverine.
Yeah.
But he's made so many good movies, that's hard to pick too.
I love Greatest Showman. It's still. I love all of the X-Men movies too.
Yeah.
But when I watched Greatest Showman for the first time, it completely blew my mind.
That's the one Hugh Jackman movie I haven't seen yet. That's atrocious, I know. I gotta watch it.
You need to see it.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good.
I will. I'll watch it.
It's so good. Anyways, so you go all the way to New Orleans just to work with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, I got, I can't remember the casting company. Oh, Central Casting.
Okay.
I submitted to Central Casting because I found out Wolverine needed a stand-in and things like that. But I submitted to background work at this point I decided I wasn't going to do background work, but I'm willing to just to be around Hugh Jackman and just see him work in his environment. So I end up getting cast as a stand-in. I drove. That's not a short drive either.
No, it's not.
That was a 13-hour drive.
That's
something like that.
Yeah, it's 12 or 13, I think. It's.
But on that set, I end up meeting some of the stuntmen. And, I didn't get paid that much for I was on that set as one day as a stand-in and then one day as a background person. But I went there and I did, 7 hours. Oh, I was way off. But
it's still a long drive.
Yeah, still.
It feels like it's going that long. When you go through Alabama and Mississippi, there's nothing to look at.
Exactly, yeah. But like I said, I went on that set and I did my networking, like I tell people to do, and I did it at the appropriate time, of course.
Yeah.
But I met Hugh Jackman's stunt doubles. There were 2 of them there because there's like 2 forms of Wolverine in Logan, if you've seen that.
Yeah.
But and also I met some of the stuntmen and what they called the Reavers off that movie, which are basically the bad guys, the mercenary types. And that was. At that point in time, I didn't get immediate gratification out of taking that risk, but in a role I played most recently, it's called Out of the Fight, a movie I was filming last week as a soldier. I got brought on board that film because I networked with one of the mercenaries off of Logan. And I immediately, he's paid attention to my work. His name's Chris Heskey, great guy, great friend. I met him on Logan, and we stayed in touch. And he's kind of watched my career from afar, and he knew that I just was a professional. He knew that I had stunt training. He knew that I had tactical and weapons training, and he's seen me grow over the past few years. And it was about 2 months ago. He gave me a call and he said, "I'm bringing you on a SAG project. You got lines. You're doing stunts, and we're going to war." And I said, "I'm game." But at that point in time, you never know when things are going to pay off for you, or you never know why. But this is why I say take risks. If I never would have went to Logan, I would have never gotten the call from Chris to bring me on board, not only as a stuntman and a soldier, but principal role with lines. And he didn't even worry. I didn't have to audition because he's seen my reel. He was brought on board as the military advisor for Out of the Fight. So as soon as he signed up for the role of military advisor, he went to the guys that he could count on, and I was one of those guys. And I would have never met Chris had I not taken the chance and randomly driven to New Orleans for a background day and a stand-in day on Logan. So that, just in the past few weeks, that went full circle. And I did Logan a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. So always take risks, and you got to be willing to sacrifice things
and never burn those bridges.
No,
keep in contact with the people you meet because you never know who's going to make it and who's not.
Exactly. I always tell people you never know where people are going, because I've worked on sets with directors that took the industry as seriously as I have, and 2 years later they're working with millions of dollars on a big budget. And now you're on a short list of people they're considering, or you're high on the list for people they want to audition for these roles. Yeah. So you want to network with people that take it as seriously as you do. So you never know where anybody's going to go. And I kind of have I think all people in this industry have a tight-knit group of people that they can count on, that they know they can call, show up, do the job right.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of work and opportunities are given in the industry. The next thing that I say to people that are looking to become a working actor is use your social media to network and market yourself. When I had my own business as a financial advisor, I used every tool I could to increase my odds of making sales, or handling somebody's, wealth or something like that. So same thing with acting. You do everything possible to increase the odds that you're either going to get seen, people are going to see you're real, people are going to see that you're working, people are going to see that you're busy. And just as an example, I'm pretty sure I might have popped up in your head just because of a post I made this past week. You never know who's going to see your work. You never know what's going to happen. And I think I know what post it was, and it already paid for itself because I'm here with you, Joe. And honest to God, that's how it happens.
And it was done for free. It's on Facebook. It's not like you had to pay for a Facebook post.
No. But, you realize that I'm a working actor and I'm taking it seriously. And you've seen me develop, too, over the past few years. But you wouldn't have known a lot of the stuff had I not been posting about it on a regular basis.
Exactly. That's how a lot of this industry keeps up with each other.
Yeah.
Is through Facebook, which I know a lot of adults and a lot of teens are kind of going away from Facebook and doing the Instagram thing.
Yeah.
But in this industry still, film industry still relies on Facebook.
Yes.
They haven't made a transition to Instagram. I mean, there is some people on Instagram. They have their Instagrams and everything. Some of the casting companies use their Instagrams for extra promotions.
Yeah.
But the main focus is still on Facebook.
Yes. And a lot of people, ask me, they're like, how do you get some of these roles and how do you get in touch with these people? Well, I've turned into a Facebook mastermind. I network with only actors, producers, writers, cinematographers, everybody behind the scene and everybody in front of the scene. That's all I use my Facebook for now. And, some people ask me, well, I have an agent, but I can't get work on a regular basis. Well, you have an agent to fight for you, but you also have to take it into your own hands and fight for yourself and dig for the roles wherever they're at on the internet. And a lot of people are surprised to hear that, there's a lot of principal roles being cast off Facebook, and it's a friend of a friend kind of thing. If you network with the right directors, the right casting directors, the right people, you're going to see them sometimes post principal roles on Facebook. There's Facebook groups for actors and models that post casting calls that are off the sites you have to pay for to get. So if you have no money you have no excuse when you're trying to, fight for jobs as an actor. Facebook's free, and you can get on there and you can get principal roles, believe it or not, and get information for auditions and submission information off of Facebook. There's Facebook groups. There's networking with, people in front of, behind the camera. And some of these groups have 10, 20,000 people in them that are posting every minute, every hour.
Yeah.
So if you're not plugged into these groups, you're not plugged into the entire, plethora of options for, seeing and viewing all the submissions that are out there. But it's crazy. I've worked with so many. One of the principal roles, I can't remember her name. She was Mike Tyson's first wife, Robin Givens.
Robin Givens, yeah.
I co-starred with Robin Givens off of a Facebook post that was never even on casting networks, was never even on Actors Access, was never on LA Casting. But I got cast as a detective in an independent film where I'm working with Robin Givens, who's made a career of herself.
Yeah.
I mean, she was predominant in she was more active in the 90s and things like that, but she's a busy working actor now. But that role was off a Facebook post of a director that was somebody that wasn't. He was somebody that I networked with when he was doing small projects, and then by this time he was working with like a moderate budget, and he was able to bring her in on the project, and then I ended up being co-starring with her. But you never know what's out there, so use social media to your advantage. Facebook, Instagram, but yeah, dig into Facebook. You have no idea how much information's on there, and it's free. Yeah. All of it's free. But
which brings up a point too, real quick. If you're paying for a lot of this information, depending on what you're going for, working in background casting, if you're paying for background casting roles, you are doing it wrong.
Yes.
You should never pay for background casting.
Yes.
If you're looking for principal, your agents typically will take a percentage of what you make, not make you pay a fee right off the bat. It's once I can make you money, then I'll take my money.
Yep.
So make sure that you're not just forking out money every month to somebody. Oh, I'll get you a job. I'll get you a job.
Yeah.
You should not be paying them unless they're getting you work.
No, some of these agencies try to get you to buy a position on their website. Some of them get you to try to buy into workshops and quote unquote develop you. And the thing is, yes, of course, you got to be developed. And now your agent should suggest educating yourself and things like that. But you shouldn't have to fork up $1,200 for a 4-hour workshop, because your agent says so. Yeah, that goes back to, submitting to a legitimate agent and not the ones that you have to pay for. You never should have to pay for anything in terms of an agent, or you never should have to pay to be in a role. It doesn't work that way. And if you come across that, be skeptical.
Yeah. Unless you're making a donation to a charity that is saying we'll give you a walk-on role. I have seen those, and if you want to pay the $2,000, $4,000 to do background, you can go ahead if you've got that much money to do it. But if you're doing background, they should be paying you.
Yep, exactly right, Joe. Exactly right. Those are the main things that I tell people, in terms of, if you're starting out or even if you're seasoned, you keep doing, these few things and it's going to end up paying off. You do a few things right, people notice.
Yeah.
When people notice, you get cast, you get called. So.
And you get called back.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to come back. And we will be back shortly after these messages.
This episode brought to you by Lent. Lent, the best time of the year to give up something sacred, like abstinence or sobriety.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Above Average Joe Show. We are about to close things up here, but before we do, Russell, you worked on a movie that I just watched, which I loved, which I know most of America probably will not see this or tend to because they're just not, it's not a foreign film kind of country typically. But if anybody out there listening is a huge Bollywood fan, movie that I would completely suggest seeing, even if you're not a Bollywood fan, go watch it. Just because it's so amazing, watch it with the subtitles, totally worth it. It will blow your mind. The movie is called Zero. That was from Bollywood. There's a huge anticipation for this movie, too, before it even came out, while they were filming it, and you got to work in this movie.
Yeah,
Tell
I did.
us a little bit about working on this movie, having to work in Bollywood, and any sort of maybe language barriers, if there were any sort of difficulties, and just the fun that you guys had on set.
Yeah. Well, I had a great time on that set. I was cast in a principal role as a astronaut, and the lead actor in this movie is Shah Rukh Khan. He's one of the world's biggest movie stars. He's got, online, he's got 60 million followers and things like that. And
how tall is he?
He's probably 5'8", 5'9", something like that.
But
in this movie, he plays...
Yes.
Yeah. What made this movie the biggest budget movie in Bollywood history was the CGI they used to make him look like he was approximately 3.5 feet tall.
Yeah, which was amazing to me, because I was like, wow, that guy is little. He was... Literally, you had what I would consider like normal-sized people, quote-unquote.
Yeah.
And he was barely up to their chest.
Yes.
Even though they were actually the same height.
Yes, yeah.
And you could not tell. It was like watching Lord of the Rings.
It was.
When you see the hobbits.
Yep. That's exactly
Totally
what they
the same
did.
thing.
They did the same. I think they used the same technology to do this with him. And they had a photo double, stand in for the scenes where he's a little guy, and they superimpose Shah Rukh Khan's face on him. But that's what made it end up being the biggest budget movie in Bollywood history ever. And I had a great time on that set. I got to shoot a scene with Shah Rukh Khan, of course, and also I did stunt work on that film. They had me hanging in cables over a space shuttle, preparing as an astronaut for the conditions of space. So we're doing training exercises within the film, preparing us for what we're going to encounter in space. So. They have me hanging over a space shuttle. They've got the camera on a crane, and they're taking footage and video and stuff like that But I had a wonderful time doing stunt work, and my lines end up getting cut from the film, but
Aw.
they did show my face, so at least I can show I was in it.
You got the paycheck for it.
Yeah,
That's what matters.
exactly. They filmed that movie in Alabama. It was at the
Really?
NASA Space
Wow.
Center in Alabama. So they have huge shuttles there that they used in a lot of the scenes, and they have environments like the one that I did my stunt work in, where I was hanging from cables. They had a full-size shuttle, and I was hanging over the shuttle doing exercises as if I'm a real astronaut.
Yeah.
But they shot that movie. They shot most of it overseas, I believe, but the parts that they shot for the Space Center, they did it all in Alabama.
Wow.
So I had a great time. I got to meet Shah Rukh Khan, and my agent got me that job, Stephanie Matties with Top Talent Management. But language barriers, there were some, but the PAs there were able to accommodate us. A lot of them knew both languages. It was the director that was primarily talking in another language, and
because he would say something to everybody, but he would say it in Indian, and then it's like, well, what about the people that don't speak Indian?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But we had great PAs there that translated for us, so we didn't have to do too many guessing games in terms of what was being said.
Good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give a spoiler alert here real quick. I'm going to read a text that I wrote the day after, or no, actually the day of. I think it was like right as I was walking out of the theater to another podcast that I work on called The Extraordinary. We talk back and forth on Facebook, and it's like, hey, I saw this movie, this was really good. I saw this movie, this was really great. So if you don't want to hear the plot line, it gives a little bit away of the movie, go ahead and shut the podcast off, hit the forward 30-second button, whatever you need to do. But the text I wrote was, I don't know who in the world thought I should write a script about a midget that falls in love with a paraplegic, but pursues his Hollywood crush just to end up flying to Mars.
Right?
So if you're looking for a tagline for a movie, it's like, what do you think will sell? Apparently that's a hit.
Yep.
As absurd as that sounds, it was a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
And there's dance numbers and singing numbers in the middle of it, which I loved.
Yeah.
When he's in the hallway and he's wooing the paraplegic girl, I don't remember any of their names from the movie, but she comes up in the wheelchair, and he starts this dance number, and it's just him in the hallway at first, and then he has this entire orchestra comes in, plays behind him. They start shooting off these like puffs of colored smoke while he's dancing. That scene alone, I could have sat there and watched 2 hours of just that scene of him dancing in those beautiful colors until the ceiling falls down. But yeah, it was just an amazing, phenomenal movie. Loved it.
Yeah.
Huge respect for you for even being in that movie.
Thank you so much, Joe.
For me, that's probably either number 1 or number 2 on my list of foreign films.
Yeah.
Because I still love The City of Lost Children, which was a movie that came out like 15 years ago. It was French. Stars Hellboy, who is also in Sons of Anarchy, whose name I can't think of off the top of my head. But I picture his face. I know who he is. He's an awesome actor. But anyways, let's go ahead and wrap this up real quick. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending some time with us and listening to Russell. Hope you guys had learned something from all of our chatting today. And good luck to all of you out there that are actors pursuing to become greater actors. And we will hear and talk to you from the next podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye. Thank you again to our special guest, Russell Snipes. Special shout out thanks to Addison and Jamie Lynn for all their assistance on this episode. The Above Average Show was written and produced by me. Theme song composed and or arranged by yours truly. Be sure to check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitters, and also look us up on Spotify and Stitcher. You can also check out another podcast I co-host, The Extraordinary, and other great media content by Moon Possum Productions at moonpossum.com.